Do we even have enough for a meeting?
Oh, yeah.
We've reached, yeah, we have a quorum, we've got 3.
Okay,
Well, 4.
Yeah,
She
4.
votes, yeah.
okay,
We have Haley to keep us in line.
yeah, that's who I'm looking for. Okay, so citizens' comments? I don't think so. The consent agenda, all items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under section 6, items removed from the consent agenda. We have one item on there, the approval of June 14th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from June 14th, 2023.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Move on to the director's report. That's where you get to take
Yeah, that's where I
over.
get to talk. Now you'll
Yeah.
be tired of hearing me for a while. Go through as, in the interest of time, as quickly as possible without leaving out any critical details. So high reservoir update. I'm finally getting excited. Not that I haven't been excited before, but we have the finish line within, I keep looking over to my calendar. So the contractor is wrapping up the final punch list. So the liner has been in, all the hard structures, concrete, all of that stuff has been completed. The liner has been installed, the floating cover has been installed. Now they're backfilling the trenches. So the floating cover has sump pumps and a piping system, so when rain lands on it, it has to go somewhere. So that's all being completed. They should have their punch list done, today is Wednesday, by the end of day today or early tomorrow. So essentially, the facility should be in the process of being transitioning into our control late this week, early next week. So we will begin disinfecting the holding tank. There's a process of, disinfecting it, adding water, testing it, tying it into the system. It will take roughly a week. And so we are tentatively looking for the system. I mean, we're on schedule. I think the date has been the 31st, July 31st. I'm optimistic that it will, I am very optimistic that it will be before that. But it's also, there's so many things. What's happened, pending that we get it completed, we get it filled, we get it disinfected, we get the clean back tees back. The system hasn't been operational for 6 months, and so there's a lot of stuff that's beyond. We can't test the pumps to feed it until there's actually water in it. So a lot of that stuff we need to, once it's live, it will be hooked into the system, and then we'll be running it to make sure when normal demand hits it, we can fill it back up with water and move water around in the system. So there will be a transition period. The public won't know because it will be online, but we have to make sure we can fill it. But yes, we are really excited that we are, I will say, slightly ahead of schedule, optimistically, but there's a lot of hurdles between now and when we lift the restrictions before we're in the clear. So a lot of updates internally and with the public. We're not sure, we're a little bit concerned of how the messaging goes out to the public of, we have no irrigation restrictions, but please don't hammer us like all in the first night. And we've talked about how best to lay that out to the public. I'm hoping if we roll this out on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday or something early in the week, people won't have time all in one day to switch their sprinkler systems on. It will transition over a period of time. And we may just ask the public to please be gentle. I mean, not just with our system, but your sprinkler system also hasn't been operational.
Exactly.
So let's bring this up, not put the gas to the floor and water everything all at once. Because also if your yard has been dry for the temperatures, watering it for 8 hours overnight is just it's not gonna hold water, it's not gonna soak in.
Just out of curiosity, have you thought about for the transition up, maybe for a week or so, maybe do something like, you know, just to give everybody kind of a chance to get things back online. So you could say, people with odd addresses do, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then even address, you know,
Yeah,
Tuesday, and then leave it off Sunday so that we can assess or.
Yeah, we've talked about, there's a couple different methods. There's one, and that is one that we considered. And maybe that's what we do. I have told people that there won't be a transitional rollout, but now you know, and it would be such a short, it would be, pending that nothing breaks, that it would be a 24 to 48 hour window, well, maybe 72 hours, where it's like, okay, we just wanna make sure it's operational before we go full. But I have told people we aren't going to do that, but now that it's really here, we may end up doing that. The other thing is that we have high volume users that we could just, it's one phone call to parks, school district, LCSC, some of these large users to just say, hey, can you turn it on?
But like you said, being off like that and just knowing
Yep.
water systems and whatnot, those pumps, all of a sudden, darn it, if not one decides to just, you know, go out.
Yep.
A part
And
of your
that's-
system, and then you're down, you
Yeah.
know, another 24, 48 hours trying to get it up.
Yeah, and there's some other, you know, the way the system's managed or regulated right now is with the additional PRVs in there. So we have to bring those pressures down as we bring the pressure up into the tank. It's not very well, it is complicated for me to understand, but the guys are giving me assurance that it's not that big of a deal. But there's so many little things like that, that we have to walk through, and so,
Because it's been down for 6 months.
it's been down for 6 months, and there's a lot of, 21st Street Booster Station is basically a PRV right now, and now we're gonna switch the flow, and now it's going back to being a booster station, and it hasn't ran for 6 months, and we've never, well, I shouldn't say, we've never fed water out of the water plant to the reservoir, which is what we intended it to do out of the water treatment plant. So, assuming that transmission main can kick right back on and pick up where it left off before, you know, I'm optimistic, but I know that something will break.
Yes.
We just hope it's something that we will be able to manage, so.
Well, just like when I don't use all the showers or tubs in the house.
Yep.
You turn them, you use them, and then they're leaking for days.
Yep,
You have to have
yep.
the plumber come in and change all the
Oh, yeah,
little.
yeah,
So, you know, there's all kinds of things that happen when they aren't used.
but it's a catch-22 in where, it's like the horse race, where we've done all the hard stuff, and now you see that finish line, and you're so close, and you're just frothing at the mouth, and you just wanna cross it, but you know there's a lot of work. And to give all the credit to the water crews, they are working an enormous amount of time in some very challenging conditions. I mean, you don't really, and I don't think the public realizes, like the Main Street Water Line project, they're on that. They're you know, they were dealing with the enforcement of the irrigation restrictions. Then on top of everything else that they do is replacing valves or main breaks or servicing just their regular job that's on top of that. And so now we're gonna tell them, we're gonna start filling that tank this weekend, and you're working over the weekend, and we need somebody there 24/7 watching that line, you know, so all credit to those guys who are out there, and it's just, I wanna get to August 1st quicker than anybody else.
That being said, I know like at other jobs, when you're obviously using your workers so much so that they'll burn out maybe over time. But I also know we had that treat thing with the mayor implemented where we had to be careful when we give prizes or
Oh,
treat
yeah,
day. Like,
yeah.
is there something that we can do for Public Works? Is still like, hey, we still appreciate you.
Yeah,
You know, anything
I haven't had much discussion internally since the reservoir, but we wanted to do the ribbon cutting and kind of a celebration of the completion of the water plant, the wastewater plant, the well, everything else that's gone on. And so we have our city picnic or barbecue coming up in August, but I think, and I have had some conversations that there are some things that we can do within our own purchasing policy to acknowledge. And I will call out some very specific employees. And it's hard because there's the managers and the supervisors, but then there's the crew. And once you start naming specific names, but there are some people that we would be in much worse conditions if we didn't have the team that we did. But I don't wanna leave anybody out, but I sure as heck wanna make sure that the people that did the work are acknowledged. So we are, I will say, days, if not, tens of days, within 2 weeks of completing all of this. And so having this be a 6-month marathon to get within 2 weeks of kind of closing the door on this. And there will be, obviously picking up the pieces of everything that we haven't done since then because we've been so focused on the reservoir. There's a lot of other things that we'll be focusing on the fall, like budget and everything else. But I'm giddy and I'm going to take some vacation in August.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
I
That's
kind of
great.
think that if we tell the public just water every other day, because it has to soak in.
Yeah, and I think that was one of my ideas of if we can work, and we have been reaching out to like the Idaho Extension Office to say, what can you recommend? I mean, cause I know pipes and streets, I don't know,
Lawns and
yeah,
whatnot.
lawns and stuff, and so
It-
that
it-
may
it
be a
won't-
message.
It will
won't
just run
absorb.
off.
Yeah.
But if it has a little bit of water
Mhm.
every other day, it should do okay.
Yep.
At that point, I
Yep.
mean, I haven't watered my yard at all. Now, it has some green around wherever I have that 800 feet of drip line.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's crispy
Yeah, yep,
dry.
yep, and if you go up
Well,
to Pioneer Park right now,
Yeah,
as well, it's the
yeah,
same neighborhood,
yeah.
Just
same,
learning from our landscape contractor, because we had a problem with our controller, so it had to be replaced. But he reminded us that, because he said, don't do long waterings. He says it's better to do, because we were kind of watering, he says, it's what it's gonna do, it's gonna soak through too fast and have no good for the roots. He said, so do 3 shorter versions throughout the day, one at night, all that bit, do 3 short ones. That way it just goes into the top part where it's supposed to go, so that the roots of the grass can absorb it. He says, otherwise you're just wasting
Yep.
water. So now that we've switched it, it's actually
Yeah.
doing exactly what you're saying, it's doing much better, it's absorbing and working.
Do they foresee lawns coming back from
If
the dead?
there are a number of, and I've spoken with a lot of, we have 450 alternative watering schedules approved, and I've spoken with a handful of them who have diligently been out there hand watering and still have greenish yards, and
I've been doing that.
yeah, I
I
talked.
mean, I'd done so much work on one part of my lawn that I wasn't gonna let it go.
Yeah.
And I've been hand watering every morning. Well, I was doing it in the evening when the sun went down, but I switched to the morning. And, it's like my right of way is what I rebuilt. Been doing that for 15 minutes, as much as I can, and it's like salt and pepper kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's semi-alive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
okay.
know,
If it's gone dormant, it's not coming back till next year. But
Oh.
if there's still
Yeah.
salt and pepper green in there.
my backyard, I just said, forget it.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if it might be worth, because I know when this first came out, I was reading a lot of comments like, it'll never come back, it's gone forever. And so I'm just wondering if it might be good to put, I don't know if we could
Yeah.
put like some common practices on the Facebook page.
Yeah,
of,
we've
like-
tried, we've reached out, like I said, the extension office, I don't think that's been out yet, but
Okay.
we have been working with them.
That would be
Even,
good.
yeah.
Common gardening practices.
Yep, and I pointed out in the beginning that, we live in a valley and the hills will turn very neon green
Yeah,
and look like
they'll come back.
Ireland. And then they're not that way now and they'll
Yeah.
come back next year. I mean, that's a different type of grass, but it's kind of the same,
Right,
same concept.
that'd be good.
So hopefully by when we meet in August, which I might not be at the meeting, but the update will be, it is online and we are out of restrictions, so.
Yay. I get asked almost every day.
Yeah.
Very often. When are they lifting?
The vacancies, moving on, so we created those 2 new positions. We had, I think at some point, 5 applications. We're down to 1, 2, 3, 4. We have completed interviews, so Chelsea Blewett, due to her busy schedule, had to drop out, so we did not interview her, so she is out. We've interviewed Gabe, we've interviewed Darlene, we've interviewed Brent. We've had some scheduling conflicts with Justin. So we've interviewed 3 candidates. The interview board, full disclosure, I am trying to not be part of the selection. I'm part of the interview, just kind of facilitating it, but I would rather have the board make the selection than have staff, just so we're clear on that. The hangup is Justin Merwin's, our conflicts, trying to get that interview scheduled. Kevin Kelly is out of town starting next week. So, and he's basically half of our interview panel, so,
And I'm out of town next week.
yeah, so I guess I leave it up to the board. We can try and schedule something. We can make the selection based off of what we've got now, or, I leave it up to the board, how they wanna move forward on the interviews. The intent was to get somebody on this sooner, or some people on this sooner rather than later. So I leave it up to.
You're out next week, you said?
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'm gone till the end of July. For
Alright,
2
and-
weeks, I'll be gone.
for how long?
So for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, oh, okay.
I'll
darn
just
it.
be gone a week.
Just one?
Just-
Two. Currently, we have 4 applications, 3 interviews for 2 spots.
Okay.
We're short one interview to complete the whole process.
So even if we had interviewed this week or next week, approved, may or may not have made the first meeting in August, if I'm doing my math right.
Yeah, we don't have a
in my
meeting
head.
this week and then, or next week.
Right.
So it would be, yeah, you're right, we won't.
So
have-
we would still miss if I'm doing the math in my head real fast, so we would still miss the first meeting in August.
Mhm.
So they still would not be able to be on the board next month anyway.
Mhm.
So we have a little time.
Okay,
Okay,
then that's fine.
Yeah, so just do my math correctly in my head, am I correct?
Well, we do have a council meeting on the 24th of this
24th,
month, I
so it could get
believe,
on
so
that
we
agenda.
could do it, for that one, if you did have a recommendation to appoint. at
Well,
this point in time.
That's,
See, I'm back on the 21st. That's a Friday.
I think if you leave one guy, not give him the benefit to interview, that would not go over well.
I agree. I think,
Okay.
I think we're okay waiting
Yeah.
okay,
a month and,
okay. We will keep trying to interview and I'm assuming we will get it, just.
I mean, it waited this many years to get
Right.
the
Yep.
commission going, so.
Well, for
Yeah, we don't need to rush.
A couple more weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, we will continue to reach out and try and find some time.
I'm sorry, back on the high water reservoir, I've been asked questions that I thought I'd ask.
Yep.
As far as, so the reserve money to pay for all of this, the 4 million, is it, 3 million?
I'd have to break, yeah, I think we're at three and change,
Okay.
somewhere between 3 and 4.
Just, I mean, I know it's been said it comes out of reserves, where specifically?
That is the water enterprise reserves, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's not out of, the, 90 days operating
Nope.
budget, it's the enterprise reserve,
Yep,
Okay.
and we try and carry that same in the water,
which
department.
may be replenished
It
through
can be
grants
replenished
or
with
anything
utility
like
rates and I guess we can get in, I'll talk about it in the budget, but
that. Okay,
we're trying to go 0% rate increase on sanitation and wastewater, and they're separate enterprise funds, and those decisions are independent of any other one, but it's convenient where sanitation and wastewater are 0%, but water, where they're at with their reserves and demand for the infrastructure upgrades, we're going with the full recommended 5.25% increase on
Okay.
that.
all right, thank you.
I'll have to go to vote on
Yep, that goes to city council.
Yeah.
And we talked, that will be at the first reading
it.
of
Oh,
the
I was
budget
thinking you had
in
to go to
August.
public vote for some reason because of the
Nope.
percentage.
It's gotta have a public hearing if it's over
Okay.
5%.
And we drained reserves from, right, we need to rebuild.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, yeah, we've
That's what I
spent we're under $1 million in water department reserves, and we will have to do an analysis of, I was driving to work today and recognizing, actually, I was going up to the orchards and seeing the difference between Lloyd and the city, and that revenue that we have not seen from water consumption during irrigation season is gonna have a major impact on closing out our 23 budget, so. All those we haven't fit, we're still hemorrhaging, whether it's spending money on the reservoir or not bringing in revenue from irrigation. So we will be doing that analysis this fall and into the winter to see what that looks like moving forward into even FY '25.
Is any of that reserve able to be replenished by insurance claim
That's,
or
again,
grants from the state or the
We
DEQ?
did receive an emergency, the DEQ carries an emergency fund, and they basically gave us what was in the fund, which is $250,000, which is
Not
Better than
shit.
nothing, I guess.
something, but yeah,
But,
it's not. We have had continued conversations with the DEQ, with the governor's office, even with Fulcher's office, to see if we can get some federal funds.
Yeah.
Haven't gotten anything back. In fact, the call for projects for water, we were out of 120 applications, we were number 40. So we're baffled why we literally put the letter of interest in under a boil order in January, and we ranked 40th in the state. It makes absolutely no sense. And so kind of putting the feelers out as to why that occurred. Idaho is putting a lot of, and Ryan might be able to speak to, where Idaho is trying to invest in smaller communities. And so there's some really small communities got a lot of money, and we didn't. And so we're trying to figure out how we can play our cards better, but there's grants and funding through the state and feds, then there's the insurance, and where that plays out. I did notice a letter to the editor that I would echo myself today that said, when are we gonna find out the cause? And it's an investigation being done by a third party that's goes through our insurance carrier, and I have no control over, because it's a third party, so they purposely don't
Right.
want the city
No, hand
having a
off.
say on, the results or anything else. I have had conversations with the investigation. I do have knowledge as to generally what happened, but I'm not allowed to speak to it, so.
Sure.
Once we keep pressuring, when it's out, and the public will know.
Okay.
But
I think
until
that's
that.
been the hardest part.
That's the hardest part.
The public wants to know, and
Yeah.
it's like, we can't tell you yet.
Well,
Because
We
we
don't, I don't
even
even know.
Yeah,
And
we
this
don't
is,
even know.
and this is one of the first times an enterprise fund here has been drained to this effect for an emergency. So I think it also helps, and is kind of a testament to that, is where you have sometimes these emergency reserves for catastrophic failures like this, because nobody ever thinks they're going to happen. And this is why why you have these reserves, and building them up is not only just for capital projects, but for catastrophic failures, because you never know with water or sewer, even though you just updated your plants and all of those things, bizarre stuff can happen out there, and this is a true testament. And so hopefully people will understand that going forward, that just like you have a rainy day fund, for the city, it's kind of the same thing, but to me, it's more of an emergency contingency fund that we have to just somehow figure out to replenish.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my
Okay.
director's updates.
Going on to 5, discussion items, the amended Public Works Advisory Commission bylaws. We need to have an approval of the amended bylaws. It's an action item.
Yes.
Has everyone had a chance to?
There was just 2 changes, as I understood, from what I was trying to read my other one. It's the membership and
Very
the
fast,
length of time, new.
And so in the, now I can't remember what section it's at. But the bylaws don't specify the meeting duration, but it just specifies the date and time that you meet. So if you would like to put a cap on that, we can certainly add that, but as it stands now, there's no language in there that says that meetings will only be an hour, 2 hours, anything like that.
So that,
I don't know any bylaws that have that
That's
particular
good.
control over,
Yeah.
okay.
And time, yeah.
because there could be lots of discussion, there could be lots of public opinion kind of things.
So it's
That
just the
went
one
until after
change.
midnight
Yes.
at council meeting.
Oh, yeah.
That was June 13.
Yeah, I went to work that late that day. I'm like, I'm gonna get to work on time, and I called my work, I'm like, I'm dead. I need some more sleep. I can't do it.
Oh, dear.
So the only thing that's changed, as I understand it, is 5 to 7, is that correct? Okay, so that's all we're voting on.
Okay, so
Unless we
I
want to.
do have one question, I don't know if it needs to be specified, that 2 of the 7 are council liaisons. Does that need to be specified?
Kathy's part of it, though. I'm like kind of liaison, but I thought you had a little more.
No,
She's just the
liaison?
chair.
I'm just the chair.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, that's just a,
You still have just one vote.
not to throw a
That's a
monkey
good
wrench.
point, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, so that,
Or do we
Yeah.
wanna, not
Or is
to
that in the
single any of
resolution?
you out, I mean, do we wanna make it, cause usually there was only one council liaison.
I don't know why we went with two, I don't know why that.
That was from the very beginning,
It must be
3
in there.
years ago.
Can't add that, it's stated in code that there's two
Oh.
council
That's what I was
liaisons.
Okay, well,
And
See,
so
it was
this just
Bradbury and I
specifies
to
the
begin
voting
with, and I
members.
think
Okay.
that nobody wanted to.
That's, it's addressed in code, so.
I was like, I think that was before my.
Scratch that, then I just think that we would say,
I don't remember that discussion.
specify that's two, because if somebody wants to get on,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, they
no,
might
that's true.
look into that.
Well, I think the code overlap, the code and the resolution overrules the bylaws.
Sure.
Those would be primary, and then this comes as secondary, if I remember correctly. So you need a motion?
I do.
All right, I motion that we approve the updated amended advisory commission bylaws for the Public Works Commission.
Had a motion, do we
I'll
have
have a second.
a second? So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Oh, do I say aye? I don't know,
You're a voting
so
member,
you're-
you're a voting
Ah,
member, that's why
I-
we're here.
Specifically what we just talked about.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you don't get to vote, you were late.
I know. That's been a trend for me lately.
No, so, all right, everyone voted, that passed, thank you.
Yeah, that's different, because my public works one, I'm just there as like a oversight, like I don't vote on anything, so I'm like, oh.
On Public Works?
Or, sorry, for Parks and Rec,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. They're non-voting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true, a lot of them are.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it kind of threw me off a minute, but we're good, I'm up to what's happening.
Okay, then we move on to B, which is the FY 2024 budget proposal, soliciting feedback on the fiscal year 2024 budget proposal for Public Works presentation at the June 27th, 2023 special meeting. Any feedback?
I will say just kind of an overview for anybody might, I don't know if we're streaming or not, but if anybody watching or anybody's here today. You know, the budget, if you're not familiar with the budget process with the city, so we generally start probably about May, staff does, and we internally, within the department, have our conversations, talk about where we're at in our current budget year, shortcomings, what we may project into everything from vehicles to water treatment chemicals to staffing, equipment, all of that stuff. We have that, compile it, goes through the director, we kind of hash out what we think is pertinent, necessary. Then we move it forward, we have a meeting with the mayor and the finance director, they ask, you know, it's the 100 questions of, you need this, what about that, da-da-da-da-da, and they ask all these different questions, and so at that point, we start compiling more of a more firm understanding of what is in the budget. And what's challenging about this is you're building this up through a process, and you may be asking for something to be added on a Monday, and by Thursday, it's denied or can't find room for it, but by Thursday, we've moved things around and we found a place for it. And so even when I provided this presentation on June 27th, things have even kind of changed in there. So so then staff does a presentation to the council, it's a work session, there's nothing formal as far as decisions being made. I try to encourage back and forth with the council, so it's the one opportunity. Public Works has the entire meeting, we went almost an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 45 minutes. I was told it was boring, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's just a lot of between all of the enterprise funds and all of the responsibilities that we have
Yes.
amongst our 70 employees, it's a lot to cover. And so to try and say, I'm just gonna give you 3 slides and 2 pie charts, it's just not gonna cover it. So that presentation was there. I think I had a good conversation, some ideas, thought, and then in August, we start doing, it's formalized. The budget will be published early August, late July, it will be published. At that point, the dollar amount, the budget will be set as far as the dollar amount for the city. You can go down, you can't go up. And so at that point, it goes into the 3 readings for the city council, and that's where the horse trading starts. So it's generally out of my hands at this point. I've done my presentation, I've answered questions to the council, I will continue to answer questions to the council, but my ability to inform the council is pretty much done at this point. So not to say that we couldn't have a liaison solicit information to the council about anything that could come out of this meeting, but my formal presentation has been completed. So if there's anything that, if you watched the presentation or you read the memo that accompanied the presentation, it's a lot of numbers. I try not to include the full printout of every line item that is in the budget because you can spend days and get cross-eyed looking at it, so it's difficult. But if there's anything that the board here wants to speak, talk about, I'm all ears.
You haven't broke Tim's record of 4 hours yet.
Yeah, say,
I have no
I
intent.
know Tim has way outdone you.
We gotta rub it in, though, keep
Yeah.
rubbing it in,
Yeah.
so he doesn't do it.
All Tim's on the agenda, everybody sit tight.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
any questions?
I had a quick question. So more of a, less on the presentation and more on the discussion that followed. I think Mayor Johnson had asked a question about the justification for raising rates.
Oh,
You
yeah.
had mentioned something about there having to be like a project or something associated with that already. We can't just raise rates.
Yeah.
And he had mentioned that, I'm gonna probably misquote what he said, but something like, the reason that they probably didn't raise rates previously was because there wasn't a need for that.
Yep.
And I guess maybe it's a comment and it's also a question of, it seems like good practice to have an emergency fund or a capital project reserve. And that rate adjustments to fund a capital reserve don't necessarily have to be, you don't have to have an approved capital improvement plan to raise a capital reserve, correct?
Mhm. Correct.
Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, you need to have some justification of what that is,
Sure.
but there's no sound true, just justify what it is and how you carry forward.
'Cause- okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, because when we were advised to have that incremental increase over the years, it was specifically stated for future maintenance and future projects.
Comprehensive.
So we're not, because when we were doing the whole project of the wastewater and water treatment plants, biggest comment, the most comment I heard the most was, why didn't we save for this? And that's what that is that rate increase is for us to save for it, so we're not having to do a bond in 35, 40, 50 years.
And see, I think I confused the mayor because I didn't say that they weren't following the plan. That's how come all of a sudden we raised the rates, and that's when he asked that question. And people still believe that we had taken the money but used it.
Yeah.
I mean, they still believe that we did, and we did not. We all went back and looked at that, and there was no increases, not even cost of living increases for years, and that's how you get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to follow that plan.
Those who may not have watched it, there was a comment I made that was from 2004 to 14, a period of 10 years, they did not raise the rates 7 of those 10 years.
Right.
And those 3 years they did, it was a 2%, 2%, and a 3%. So they weren't significant. And then 15, I think it was like a 15% rate increase. And so that's kind of how that goes, where you don't save, you don't invest, you don't take care of what you got, and then something happens and you have to. And I've told the council before, my goal is to have a constant, a steady, keep up with inflation, follow the guidelines. And so, and I don't know, I just have a spreadsheet that says, here's all the water rates, here's all the sewer rates, here's, sanitation rates. I don't know the reason, and it may be the capital facility plan was not updated, so there was no master plans that identified any projects. So staff didn't take it to the council and said, well, you don't have any projects, you don't have it. Or the staff did take it to them and the council said, well, I don't support that, I want to keep it at 0. So I don't know, or it
Who
could,
knows?
but a combination of all of
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
I don't know why, and I'm not really trying to stir up ghosts of the past, just to say,
Oh, come on.
Well, I guess I'm not understanding, because a master plan is just sort of a guiding document. Your living and breathing document is your capital improvement plan. So that is your living, you have a master plan that kind of identifies projects and helps you kind of, and let everybody know, you have some problems out there. But it shouldn't be the one where it says, that's how, at least in all the experience I've had over the years, it's not a document where you base budget and costs and increase. Where I'm accustomed to that, it's always been on the capital improvement plan. So you usually do like a 5-year capital improvement project, and you identify all the funding sources, you identify the project numbers associated with them. And then you, for each project, you identify those sources of funds and where it's at. So that way the community, you identify all the funds in the document, because a lot of the community doesn't understand the restrictions on funds and how that works, and that they can only be used for certain things, or certain grants come in, they're only used. So I'm used to, a document basically saying, okay, you have this pot of money that comes in, it can only be used for this. We've already identified, with 1.5 coming in, we've already identified these projects, look at the CIP, da-da-da. And then you also, in there, where like in the water and stuff like that, I'm used to seeing where it identifies, we have all these, capital improvement projects that are listed. Right now we have this, and then every year they still update, even though it's a 5-year plan, they still update the document, basically kind of saying, we didn't do a rate increase, or it's not a rate increase at this point. So that way it's kind of a living document,
that
so
keeps it
that way
alive.
people know when you've done one or when you haven't done one based on that. So that's why I was kind of a little frustrated when I was listening to that meeting, because I was like, but that's a master plan, that shouldn't be your guidance document for your capital improvement project, which I went back and looked on the website, and I also responded on the survey. So I'm lost there when I was reading all of that, because I'm kind of, agreeing with the two of them. It's like, well, there should be something more, on an ongoing pressing basis, especially when costs change, and, yearly, and inflation affects it. So and we know how expensive it is and the time involved to do a master plan.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking, that's really old.
Yeah.
Nothing personal, but it's
Yeah.
like, that's
Oh,
really
yeah.
old. I'm going by your new numbers.
Yep.
So I don't know how to change that so that it's a little bit more useful, not only for yourself, but for the council and the community.
Yeah, and I think what ended up happening is we've got such a surge of capital investment right now that was in such a state that we couldn't kick the can down the road anymore. So we've invested so much so quickly, it's overwhelmed the system, it's overwhelmed staff, it's even overwhelmed kind of the process of trying to get through this stuff in a timely manner. And so, yeah, I mean, again, having this board here helped me better communicate and kind of parse through the technical documents and getting it through, and so maybe helping me communicate more clearer moving forward, because I cannot have what happened from 2004 to 14 happen from 24 to 34. That's just not what we can do.
I'd like to add on maybe something that Commissioner Rick said. We did the water master plan that kind of set forth a bunch of the projects that are being completed now, water plant, the well, those kind of things. And what we would typically do is what occurs in the wastewater facility plan as well, I'm assuming traffic plan, is that you essentially have an initial capital improvement plan that comes out of that, that's usually got some sort of debt-funded component to it, which is exactly what it was, right? So there were 4 projects identified, or 5 projects identified, along with a funding source, and then that served essentially as the application for the funding package to complete those items. But you're exactly right. Once those projects are in and done, you go get the money for those are funded through debt or debt grant, whatever the packages that you can get. It's the following projects, it's the ongoing projects that are critically important to program out and really look at annually.
And those are CIP projects as well.
Correct, yep. So we look at it as like a 0 to 5 year plan. You can use facility plan level numbers. Anything past that, that thing needs to be updated annually for sure.
Yep, and that's what the master plans, water and wastewater, both will need to be updated here in the next year or two. Just because
Maybe there's another way. And I'll talk with you, I guess, kind of offline or share, and I've got a couple ideas and I've got to do some research and I'll bring it to the next meeting, just to kind of show a couple maybe different examples of maybe how to bring that forward so that it's understood better.
Yeah.
That it's something we can follow better, that can be updated easier by staff, and identify funding sources and things of that nature. So then, because the only criticism I had on your whole presentation, and it's not criticism in the sense, and please don't take it that way, it's just, Public Works is too vast. It's just too vast. And you're trying to, in such a short period of time, so I was impressed you got as much as you did in. I was like, it's good. That was impressive. In 2 hours, you got that much in. Wow. But what's really hard is when, and I understand the CIP is part of the budget and you're trying to pull aside capital projects, but it's like you should almost have one presentation just on capital and just walk through that. The reason being is your capital projects are always gonna be, the big ones, and it was kind of a little confusing going back to your
Yep.
day-to-day expenses
Yep.
and then back to your CIP. And so on the CIP, of course, it's always the big things, and you're not gonna fund everything the first year, so you can kind of highlight some of those projects and what. But on the budget part, I was kind of wanting to know more. We got a little bit of the equipment side, didn't really hear much about staffing. I heard about retirements, but I didn't hear about backfilling positions, seasonal positions, or how that was working in the budget and your expenditure side of it, which is what I was kind of expecting more. But it's hard when you're trying to balance, the big side of it and give the updates that you were the other night. So that was my only kind of, my questions today were more sort of on the other side. And then maybe next year with the commission being on board, we can start having some of that discussion in the earlier part of the year before the May meeting with
As
your
we
staff.
we start rolling up in May, this is very good.
Because my concern was the biggest thing the council brought up in the thing was the fleet and how overwhelmed the fleet was and getting equipment and listening to that whole part of the conversation and trying to understand how your depreciation fund works, so to speak, in the various budgets. So that some of those things like vehicles or skid steers or certain things can get replaced more efficiently versus is this a depreciation fund just basically so that it's the accounting side where they certain, if I'm remembering through the finance and the auditing side, when you put large infrastructure in, they have a certain amount, 20 million, whatever, and then it goes through a depreciation process, and so then that depreciation number will change as it goes down, as it's depreciating that equipment. So that's why I wasn't kind of sure, because I couldn't find that written anywhere, and I was trying to research it. So that was one concern, because departments, if they have vehicles or whatnot, they should be paying into an internal fund for, vehicle replacement and things like that. And I know PD doesn't like that.
Well,
But that happens, or fire and stuff.
Yeah, I've worked in a couple different environments, and in many environments, Public Works controls fleet. And in this situation, they do not. And so I'm still not, being 2 years into this, I'm not really well versed on the intricacies of paying the replacement charges and how it functions with fleet. Because sometimes the enterprise funds will pay for their own equipment outside of what fleet operates with. And so I get questions, I'm like, I don't know sure which fund this piece of equipment came out of. So it is, I do need, that is definitely one piece that I need to get a little bit more better. In fact, I had a city councilor email me yesterday asking about a sanitation pickup. So yeah, there's.
So, because that was the only thing I didn't understand, and then I was kind of surprised that it wasn't brought up or whatnot, and especially in the Public Works situation, about a lot of these funds, since they're high dollar amounts, if they're in interest-bearing accounts or specialized funds, so that they're gaining interest on the dollars instead of just sitting there.
Yeah.
And that wasn't discussed, but maybe it's on the bigger part of the
It was
budget,
on,
but I was trying to
finance
read
did their
some of
own
those.
presentation the
Yeah.
next night.
As like an overall.
On Thursday,
Right,
yeah, and
yeah.
those funds all.
I went through this one as well, thank you, Haley, for sending that out to all of us. So those were my really fast questions, and then the whole sanitation thing, I'm assuming, I'm not gonna get into that now, I'm assuming you're gonna bring the whole contract services and everything back to this before it goes to the city council, so at least we have a chance to discuss it
Yeah.
prior to,
Yeah, we will
Going to
need to
them,
do
because that's coming up
a
fast.
sanitation update to this board. Let's probably put it on next month because,
you have to be here.
well, yeah, you guys can talk about it if I'm not here.
You have to be here.
He's like, I'm leaving,
Yeah.
I'm out.
No, there is, the one that's, we need to make a decision on is the, Clearwater composting with biosolids and yard waste, that contract. They need to be notified if we don't take any action by the end of this calendar year, it will terminate at the end of next year's calendar year. So we have, what is it, 18 months from today?
Some lead time.
Yeah,
Well,
but that
but-
conversation needs to be had now.
But you said if no action is taken by the 31st of this year, it's automatically terminated?
It
What
will
did you just say?
It will terminate at the end of, December 31st, 2024.
Right, so we have to make a decision by the end of this fiscal, or the end of this year?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So let's put it on the September meeting then.
Okay, yep.
Unless we can do a special meeting in August around your schedule?
No, I think I
Because
won't have any
this should-
information to provide, other than the contract. So let us get some information gathered for September, and then we will bring it to you in September. And then we'll lump in, because there's the Soton County landfill that expires in 25, but it just, there's no stipulation, it just expires, and I can give you some updates on that one.
So you'll, okay,
Yeah, those are the two contracts that are set to expire.
so that needs to come up fast, okay?
I have another quick comment question. In the interest of what we do as a commission, it seems like, you were talking about having a breakout on the capital improvement plans for each fund, if you will. Rather than trying to present the details of that to the full council, seems to me, I mean, I'm certainly open on this, but this would be a good group to bring the detailed workshops on that stuff to. That way it keeps the presentations to council at the level that you took it to this year. Is that, would workshops on the particular funds be appropriate for this group? Sure seems like it.
I think so.
No, I think I agree with you, but I also think, the presentation of having kind of been down this road a little bit with some council and council members and working in public works, it was a decision made to start doing a special, and it doesn't have to necessarily be during the budget cycle sometimes. Sometimes it's good to do it outside of that to get them thinking about it, so they always would do it like 3 months before the budget process started. So usually in September, a CIP was taken, and it was a presentation just for the council, just to, learn about all the various, and you have to realize there's CIP projects, not just in water and wastewater, there's other divisions and parts, especially when I was looking at all, parks and things like that, the pool, things like that. And they really started getting into it because it gave them a different perspective of how to think about their budget and think about capital improvement projects, all the big things going on and what to expect and where the funding was at that point. That's why I was talking about the various funding sources, because if you put it in a chart, you can already say that this project doesn't have any funding, but they're planning to get funding in year 2 or year 3 or year 5, and you can say over the next 5 years we're putting $20,000 into this budget, based on that, and it's already kind of you've already done your forecast budgeting on that, and then the council sees that based on this. Okay, we got these 5 projects, this. Okay, I understand where the money's coming from over the next 5 years because they're already approving that as part of their budget process, and so it really got them. It was a really outstanding tool at that point for them to understand and keep it separate from the day-to-day of how many officers do you have to have, how many pool parks do you have to have, how many staffing things. So it kind of saved them, it saved them a little bit of time, if that means, because then they had that information and then they could make the two meet. Does that make sense?
Yep, nope, that doesn't.
I think as a counselor. I would rather have that than less information. The more information I have, the better I am to represent the citizens and know that I made the proper decision, whether it be a rate increase or not a rate increase, or project yes, project no. So I wouldn't want any information held back. I'd rather have more than less.
I like the concept of if
I like it before.
I break it out, the capital and
Yeah.
operations, instead of flipping between them as I
Yes.
go, just like, here's the discussion for all the capital, and we can probably have room where talk about water, we talk about wastewater, because a lot of what we're struggling with now is the overlap of, you know, this water and this wastewater project need to go concurrently. So, but if we just focus on capital, this is the meeting for capital, we'll talk about operations separately. I like that idea, and that's something I think we can.
Once we get past that 2 hours, I start to get,
And-
my
and-
brain starts to hurt.
No, and that's where I started getting lost, because I'm used to this. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
used to, you know, having to help write presentations, having to do the PowerPoints, you know, having to help numbers, all that crap together. Not crap, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's a lot, and it's a lot of work even for staff. I mean, staff works their tail off helping a director put all this together, as well as the finance staff. So trying to get everybody to help put a presentation of that magnitude level was, you know, it might look simple, but people work their tails off to do that. But I got lost a few times when I went from the capital to the daily operating expenses, and I was like, okay, so where are we now? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we go back to the operating, I was like, okay, but what happened to that, you know? And it was just, it just was just a little too much for me, you know, going through.
Well, it's valid.
I got the same lecture from my wife.
Oh!
She said, you talked a little
And she-
fast,
and
because I
she-
tried
and
to
she's
speed up
right.
on the back end, and then
And
she
this
said,
is
there's.
always right, we're not gonna argue.
Make you watch yourself back. I'm gonna
No,
watch
I
recording
can't
of
watch
yourself.
myself,
I know, I'm
yeah.
the same. I'm like, I should, because they say it improves your public speaking, but.
So just real quick, are you okay on staffing? Because I really was concerned about staffing levels, you talked about retirements.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I mean,
are we okay?
yeah, I mean, yes and no. So
Always use one.
the problem in which we're having is competing in the current job market. So if
Exactly.
you're anybody who's a trained operator, CDL, we're not getting those applications. And it's not just us, you know, it's the county, it's on the other side of the in
Private
Washington.
sector.
It's everybody who's struggling to get trained operators out there. We have a revolving door in our sign and signal division. We have one supervisor and 2 guys who work under him, and we've trained so many people. Maybe it's 3. We have 2 today, but we have 3 positions, but we struggle with that. And we've talked about, I mean, if it's, you know, Lewiston, Clarkston is not Spokane, Coeur d'Alene metro area, so you have a smaller pool to get to, it's somewhat remote, so, you know, there's a lot of people who, like myself, I'm not from here, I have married into a family that is from here, so I have a draw to be here and not leave, and so that's what's happening there, where we just have a smaller pool that we pull out of compared to some of the other metro, Boise, Coeur d'Alene, those areas have just a bigger pool. So there's that component. I don't know how to have a solution other than we start paying people more money. And that just obviously has a ramification in the budget. And is it better, you know, temporaries, we used to hire up to 10 temporaries in the summer for just paving and that college kids. We can't get, I think we have 2, 3 now, 2?
Ooh, that's painful.
Yeah.
We have one regular.
Yeah, we have one regular and then sometimes we'll get another straggler that comes in. So we can't, that
can't make
program
that.
is just not working out in the last 4 years. Like we've gone from 10 to 12 to now, we consistently have one person that comes back in the summer and then maybe 1, maybe 2. And so we've talked about, do we just scrap that program and bring in more employees throughout the year and pay, you know, how do we spread that across the board to get more people in there?
And I would have loved part of that conversation
Yeah,
last night,
yeah.
because that's what I was afraid you were gonna say, and that's something I'm hearing, not just here, but in a lot of government
It's, yeah,
locations.
Parks is struggling, PD is struggling, fire is in a unique situation just because of the local market right now. It's, the job market is challenging right now, I think.
Over all around.
It's getting a little bit better. We have a GIS analyst position out right now, and we've got, last I heard, 3 qualified, really good applications, so that's
Well,
good.
that's encouraging.
Yeah.
Is this something that you can maybe work out maybe a program, or it was something that I know, getting water operators, oh my goodness, it's national. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know what the
Yep.
situation is, but even getting staff to go through their certifications for D1, D2 and all that, because you have to have on your water crews, you have to have certain people with various levels and stuff. And I know that it was hard for some of the public works staff to, because they have to study all the map, they have to study all the other things associated with that. And they actually set up a program with the local college to help them go through the books and help them study. And then, a couple of them would be working together on those things. So I was thinking, there's such an incredible technical school here. Maybe that's something in the future to look at, is maybe setting up, because they have the diesel school, they have the HVAC school, they got all these other things, and that requires some very hefty, but maybe it's something where talking to some of the other cities that require operators, talking to some of the private sector as well, and setting up a technical school for water and wastewater operators, because then they don't have to go so far. They can go in, they can start doing that. I don't know, but it was when they finally were able to kind of help them and do like this coaching and stuff, we finally had people go through it. It was hard, and they said it was really hard to get their various certificates, even though they did an incentive for them to get it. So like, I don't know, it's like an extra $100 a month. It wasn't a lot, okay? But they got an extra for each certification, and then they up. And that seemed to help, but they still struggled on the testing, testing. So
Lewiston is really unique, and I found this out after I got here, in that water especially, but also including wastewater. Water, we have probably per capita the most class 4 operators in the state of Idaho. We have a fraternity of dudes who challenge each other and want to test up, and it's incredible. I mean, we have some really skilled operators, and those skilled operators are bringing up the younger operators and getting them to test up
so
through
that
it.
coaching helps.
Yep, and so, we have some really good coaches, and we have some really good managers that
That's
work through this,
fantastic.
and so that's water
Okay.
and wastewater to some degree. The challenge right now is transportation, CDL drivers, and there's new federal laws, and so we're working with Department of Transportation, the county, some Washington too, to train the trainers and then start implementing basically what you said, kind of a in-house, it's not an in-house, it's a cooperative training program that because what we're finding now is we just don't get any applications for if it's a CDL or, we haven't hired any water operators, but like wastewater operators. We're not getting them. We're not getting the applications. And so we have to hire somebody who maybe has the aptitude to get there, but then we have to train them, and that costs money. So we're working through some of those ideas, and
I know, but then they train and leave.
well,
That's-
exactly.
that's-
We talked about
that's-
that, of like,
I know.
of when you hire on, you agree to a contract that we will pay X thousands of dollars for your training. If you leave before this date, you owe us
X amount of dollars.
X amount of dollars.
Yeah, I
So
think that's a really
we've
good
talked
idea.
about that.
Something,
Yeah.
I think that's good.
SEL has their technical training too, near the diesel techs and all that
Yes.
area. But they're even with having that option and allowing you to find a way to move up in SEL, they're having a hard time getting people to partake, to do it. Whether that's scheduling complex and all that nonsense, I'm not sure, but they're struggling too, because they've lots of times have met with people and be like, we need you guys to get in these programs. I think they only had like 2 people sign up for this last one, even though they tell us all the time it's readily there for us to partake. Just, I don't know, it's a weird workforce scenario that we're in.
And I don't know if that's something to have that conversation in the future with the council when you have your operations side, because that's a really important thing kind of for them to know, is those struggles, so that.
Yeah, it's a,
I mean, you try not to tell them those struggles, but if you don't have
It's a-
staff to do the job, it makes their lives just as hard as yours.
we
because
had
you
a
can't explain things.
managers meeting or directors meeting right before this meeting, and it's a funny thing, working for an elected body, working for the public. I see all the behind the scenes numbers and what amounts to this budget and how it all goes, from payroll to, what we're accomplishing and what we're not accomplishing, yet I'm relying on an elected body, and sometimes the elected body says, no, we're not gonna listen to that. And so it's a challenge if you went to the work session, if you saw the work session Monday talking about Bryden and fixing streets of, we're gonna lower taxes and we're gonna fix all the streets. Those two don't
They do.
they don't work.
No.
And so trying to fix
Yeah.
sins of our past of underfunding, whether it's transportation, water, wastewater,
We are
stormwater.
sinful.
We're underfunding, it has been underfunded, and I think I said Monday it didn't get here overnight, and we're
No.
not gonna get out of it overnight.
No.
But if you continue to underfund it, and I'm not saying where the funds should come from, I'm just telling you,
If you,
this is what it costs to rebuild a water main, this is what it costs to rebuild a road. It's not gonna get cheaper,
Oh,
maybe
no.
there's a grant that will come, we have an opportunity for a good grant for some transportation projects, but it doesn't, these things do not, if it was easy, we would have figured it out by now.
Fixing water projects, all they do is go up. Every single one.
Yeah, I think the
Say
hardest
anything.
part you're looking at is that the property taxes rose regardless of what we did, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
us on the and county did not raise, but yet it still rose, and so they're automatically thinking that we did it, and so
Sure.
they're, what are you doing with our money? We didn't get that money.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the hardest part is creating that clarity there, that hey, just because your taxes went up, we didn't get the money, and it doesn't mean we have any more money for the road, so that's why things are still falling under, and staff are doing their best they can with the resources that they have. And so that's been definitely a struggle for us, I know on the council, when we get emails and we're trying to explain to the public, like, I know it seems like we did, but we didn't, and then having to explain why.
Roads is always the number one.
I think we need to move on. Were there any items removed from the consent agenda? No. So, moving on beyond that. Okay, to 7, upcoming events and meetings. Our regular meeting for August is on the 9th. A query of commissioners that will be attending the next, I'll be there.
I think we should just.
I did
is the
verify
director gonna-
that is the first day of my vacation, and I'm planning being out on the 9th.
Does he
Okay.
have to, do you have to be here? I guess
You
he
don't-
kind of
I don't have to
No,
be there.
he's the director, so we can have a meeting without him, but he is the main source of information.
Might not be as long.
Yeah, we'll be out of here quicker.
That's true. I mean, but there's still a lot to probably go over if we
I
had
mean, we
someone
may,
willing to take over.
There's always stormwater, we don't have to cancel today, if there's nothing on the agenda, you can query and cancel later.
Okay.
I think there is a lot on there, if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable if your supervisors
Yep.
are really good at, giving updates and stuff like that.
I
Then
think,
have them bring, whether it's the, sanitation or whatever, just so
whether
we
it's
start.
city council or this board, I think it'd be great for you to meet some other staff besides me.
Yeah, I'm tired of seeing you, man.
Yeah,
No,
I talk too much.
Well, how come there's nothing on the agenda for this?
I think that was from last month.
Those were the minutes
Yeah.
from last.
Oh, is that,
That was all part of the minutes.
because I thought,
I
I thought
misunderstood,
we,
I misunderstood that too.
I'm
and
looking at, I knew that there was something in here and like it didn't show up. So I guess if we wanted to continue talking, we might still have a little extra time, but I was thinking we were gonna go through that. Okay. Get back on the right page, Kathy. And where is that? There. Okay. So, yes, we'll see if there's nothing for us. But tentatively, how many people will be here on the 9th?
I should be able to. Don't plan on not.
Okay, all right. And I'll make 5, so, okay. Unfinished and new business, board member comments. Comments should not be related to any item currently before the commission or an item that may come before the commission in the foreseeable future and should be limited to comment, not discussion.
Tell your team they're doing great.
Yes.
I keep
That's
trying
all
to
I
say
got.
that I know that's hard and that, we just appreciate them, and I know they don't always get the credit that is deserved, and they get put under the dirt, but they're dusting their shoes and continuing going, so I appreciate it.
Definitely.
Agreed.
Couple of comments quickly, one related to something we were discussing a little bit earlier, but
I'll allow
I still wanna, you know, we talked in the first meeting, I think, about what our purpose is as the commission. And I just, I want, you know, I think we all want this to be impactful and useful. I guess I'd like to kind of revisit or maybe even consider that as an agenda item. Moving forward is, you know, making sure that we're keeping our eye on that we are providing value to Public Works and City Council.
Sure.
So one of the discussions earlier was getting a lot of detail to council. You know, if we're doing that and letting them work through it, what purpose do we serve as a commission? That's not a question for the group, it's just a question to think about. And then the second comment I had was, one of the things I think, Dustin, that you had talked about before was a plan of plans.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that Moscow's actually, I think they're working on one right now that kind of is taking all of their separate facility plans and trying to do coordination, and that's been a piece through my experience in my career and what I do is it's really challenging to get water, wastewater, traffic, or streets, you know, all of that coordinated to where you can actually do, everyone wants to talk about doing corridor projects and coordinated projects, but they almost never happen. I guess I would like to see how Moscow's is doing and see if it's worth.
Yeah, the plan of plans that, I mean, I don't know how it picked up the title, other than it was a plan of multiple plans, was specific just to the Main Street corridor, and how, because people kept talking about what does the Main Street project look like, and so we needed to define, and that was when the ARPA dollars were coming out, and so that was part of, as well as the water, was trying to determine what are the boundaries and scope of what a Main Street project would. So it took all of the plans, the wastewater, water, stormwater, and compiled them into a single plan that kind of laid it out, put some estimates to it, put some model, you know, general concepts to it. And so that's what the Main Street one, that's what the plan of plans was, just for Main Street. But that was something early on in when I started here, was working with our asset management GIS stuff to say, we need to start, because that was, like you say, that was the biggest challenge, you know, when you're doing a water facility plan or a wastewater facility plan, your focus is straight into what that is. And now as we start working through and finding the conflicts, and it gets even, every week it becomes more challenging, because right now wastewater is for a multitude of reasons is financially far more stable than where water is. And so, but we can't send wastewater off to complete all of their projects knowing that water's gonna be coming up right behind them and tearing up the road. I mean, that's not what we wanna do. So I think that's something that some of it is just straight spending enough time to lay out all of the projects and get it linear in your mind to understand it. Some of it is more of a policy discussion of, you know, trying to determine, you know, the state of this utility can't wait any longer versus these can be bundled in you know, trying to just grade everything out. That's the biggest challenge. But yeah, we can put that on a future agenda.
I'd be curious to see how Moscow's is going and if they've got a maybe scope of work that they're pursuing right now, but first ones I've seen that have done it, so.
Okay, any other comments? Moving on to staff liaison comments. Who are the liaisons?
I know, I already talked.
Staff,
You and I.
Sorry,
So
I
I think
skipped
this
it.
is stat, so me and Haley, but I have no
Yeah,
problem.
it's just you and I are.
You were
We were-
the council
yes.
liaison.
We're the
Oh,
liaisons.
they don't see that one on here. We're just members.
You're board members.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was right.
Oh, all right.
That's it.
So I don't have any comments, do you?
No,
Did you-
I
okay.
already went.
Okay,
We're good.
all right, future agenda items.
I do have that,
I
possibly.
Okay,
So I'm gonna be bringing up speed limits here and going over that. The mayor, I don't know what date he's gonna put it on the agenda, but I don't know if you guys feel like it might be helpful for you to hash it out as a group and talk about what we maybe want to recommend to the council to kind of guide us forward in the discussion. We don't have to, but I'm just bringing it to you guys first.
I forgot about that.
So when you say, can you just be a little bit more
So
specific
there's a
with
couple,
regards?
so the overall speed limit's 25 if
Mhm.
not posted. So even in the small, as far as I understand it, even the small streets, like community streets, I think it should be reevaluated to 15. I think it's way too fast, those narrow streets to going 25 with kids, family members, so I wanna look at that. So there's a couple streets, I don't have it on me right now, but I think you sent me some
That's into
streets
the
to go
code
through.
section, yeah.
So we can go through which streets to focus on. And then there's some other like borderline zones that have been brought up to me from the public as far as like where it's 25 and then it's 35 all of a sudden, but it's kind of a trap in a way because they don't realize it's slowing down at that point.
17.
Yeah, well, and by the new, where you're going down to Gun Club, you know, and then it hits
Oh, okay.
SEL, like it hits, apparently it hits at a certain point that, but someone didn't realize that, so then they got pulled over even though the sign, where the sign was laid out wasn't exactly reflecting of where the speed limit changed. So just kind of honing in, cleaning up that so that, safer, cause obviously I don't wanna just go around increasing speeds and then we cause accidents. So I want it to be a detailed discussion of what is actually a good move forward for this as far as safety and clarity for the public and our police force that is enforcing it, so that's kind of my goal.
And so it's under the code that the council would approve the
Council
speed
approves
limits?
all, so yeah, the code, as Cassie said, it's basically you're 25 unless it's specifically called out in the code and it has the mile markers and limits.
Because I know there's a whole science and traffic engineers and how they go
Yeah,
about
and we should probably
traffic
talk
counts
about
and all
that
bit.
too.
So there's, I know just from dealing with a traffic engineer who was quite particular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was something else, but I learned a lot from him over the years, even though I felt he was a bit, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But they do believe in their science, and so when you hear about the science, it's really fascinating. And, you know, and so I hope that could be part of the
I
conversation.
think there needs to be a
explain-
discussion, cause
Yeah.
if you deal with, it's usually the 85th percentile, so 85% of the vehicles travel at this speed or below. And no matter what you do as far as signing it below, like if 85% of the cars drive 45 miles an hour on a road and you sign it 25, more than likely it's
They're gonna
not,
get yeah.
it's not gonna change, cause it's based off of the road. And this is the opposite of what you were saying, if you've got a narrow,
Right.
neighborhood road.
But
it's-
she's right about, like, I've seen it in some of the neighborhoods as well, she's exactly correct,
Yeah.
because there are times it's like, it's by a school, and there's supposed to be like school zones, and they should be slowing down around the school zone, and they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Yep.
flying through a neighborhood, and it's like scary as crap.
And we may even.
And we don't have a lot of speed limit signs, that was actually something our police chief brought up to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was like, there's not enough speed
I think this would be
limit signs.
one that would be
agree.
great for this board, because I
That's
think we
what I
could
thought
talk
too,
about,
so.
you know, the science or the engineering behind it. Not that I've had my rubs with
Yeah.
traffic
Oh,
engineers.
it's yeah, I did too, but.
But yeah, I think this is
fascinating.
great, you know, to talk about something that, you know, to come up with, you know, people have all kinds of feedback, but to have a solution of, say, we reviewed it, here's some sections that we think we can improve.
Yeah.
And we may even wanna bring in PD, because typically somebody will come to us and say, you need to re-sign that, and first thing we'll look at,
PD
we'll do a
is-
speed study and police department.
Okay, I thought so.
And so they, you know, first thing I'll do is I'll look, and if there's no, if they're all below the speed limit, or it's like one person going fast all the time, I'll reach out to the police department, they'll come out and do an enforcement, and that's the first thing we wanna do. Then we look at, we'll go through the whole process.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
gonna be
something
interesting.
else. Oh, it's.
Yeah.
Well, so for me, if I bring this to council, I was glad that we had this here. This is like, oh, this is an opportunity for me because you guys, I need you guys, is really honestly, I need you guys to help me pick this up. Because if I just bring it to council, but I don't kind of have a suggestion or a narrow way to go, it might become a dead-end conversation that us on the council talk about. So with you guys being able to hammer it out and getting studies and talking about how long maybe was it since we've changed the speed limits or reevaluated. So this will be really help me to then go back to council and say, hey, us on Public Works Committee went through this, and this is what we suggest, and this is what we think would be best moving forward, and then obviously the council elaborates beyond that.
So as part of that future agenda item, give us a copy of the zone and then the ordinance,
Yeah,
the
I'll just
code
forward you
part,
what
so
I-
that we understand what it is, and then try and work with the traffic engineer, whatever, and figure out a process is what you're
Yeah, I
saying.
think-
Yeah, cause I don't know where to go from here to
Yeah,
be
I think
honest, so
if we
need
start
help.
high level and talk about what are we trying to accomplish, how, engineers get really touchy when we start saying, that one needs to be 20, that one needs to be 24,
Start
and,
throwing things out of a
oddball,
hat.
so, yeah, so
I
we
need to
need
be
to.
shooken up, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I did that a few times, it's fun.
And then I think it may be once we talk high level what we're trying to accomplish, then we can talk about specific streets
Yeah.
and then have those
And
recommendations.
to me, this goes back to your first thing, where it's like, what is the purpose here? And to me, this would be
That's
a
a perfect-
purpose, and we also would make a difference, right? So this committee recommended this, and if it got approved, this is who did it, so that's,
Great
I
project,
appreciate
I
it.
love it.
I'm
Okay.
excited.
All right. Did you have any comments?
I like the speed limit thing,
Yeah.
I think that would be a good addition to
No,
at least have something to,
Camera through,
Yeah.
yeah, one particular thing.
yeah.
I don't know a lot
We have
about it. I
4
feel
big
like we're
items
gonna
coming up now, so.
Good luck in
We
August.
just added, that's number 4.
We'll have them all done when you get
Yeah,
back.
Well, we'll knock them out.
Well, I'll let the
Well,
mayor
on your
know
desk when you get
to not have it come to council
Yep,
prior to
yep,
having
that
it
will-
come to us. So I'll
That'd be
update them on that, so that way we get a chance to hammer it out and then we'll take it.
I feel like part of what you're saying, and the reason being is, I feel like we're behind. And I feel like, and it's nothing personal, I feel like the council's already heard it, but you're gonna hear it now. It's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, but they've already kind of heard it and made their decisions, before we've had a chance to really dive
Do
in. So I
anything
feel
about
like, I feel like we're really behind right now on the budget and all those types of things.
Not to lean on this too much, we just really started.
Yeah.
So the
Learning.
goal is to,
Yeah.
next year, we'll be ahead of the 8 ball.
Yeah, cause right now I feel like you're
Those
saying.
budget things we should start talking about in January, before they get given the
Yeah.
stuff.
Cause I feel like, well, they've already made their decision, why do they want us? I mean, nothing personal, but it's kinda like, okay,
No, I get it.
what's our point,
And this one, we'll need it. We'll need help. This is gonna be a big hurdle.
What a great meeting.
Okay, any other comments? Future agenda items, anything?
Got mine in.
All right, all
I'll
right.
save some more for later.
Well then, we come to adjournment. That's an action item, by the way.
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Hey,
Aye.
only 17 minutes over. We did pretty good,
Wow.
guys. Not that we have to.
We're
do too
slacking.
much.